Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Hopefully we won't hear any loud noises during the recording here. Our solar panels needed some work, and they were able to fit us in just in the last half hour here. So, and that's directly above me where I am right now. So it sounds like they're done, but hopefully we won't have to deal with any loud rattling going on up there.
Yeah, we keep meaning to get solar panels, and we have not done so. Apparently, we've had people come out and go like, well, we could try, but you don't have a lot of roof facing the sun, so you wouldn't get much out of them. And so we sort of petered out, but we should go ahead and get them.
Yeah, well, we got them 12 years ago and just paid them off in the last month.
Okay. Jack had an amazing baseball game where he pitched a 1-2-3 inning. Then his next baseball game, he was pitching and threw out his knee somehow. And so then he had to miss soccer camp this morning, and that was all a bummer. But other than that, things are good. Oh, my daughter came home from her last day of summer school with a plaque saying that she was a demon debater, that she had been the best debater in class. We always wanted her to debate so that she could have something competitive like Jack did, but she's just not a very competitive person. And she was always like, no, I don't want to compete. I don't want to, even though she was always willing to recognize that she would have been hellaciously good at debate. But she was like, she just didn't want to compete. And we totally understand that.
Didn't the plaque say something about her being like a verbal warrior or something like that? Yes, which seems like a description for our mom's side of the family in general. Generally, any conversation is a battle for holding your ground.
Unfortunately, she gets that from both sides of her family. My daughter does. So, she's done a wonderful job.
All right. So we are going to do the second section of books from January of 1969. We've got Fantastic Four number 82, Captain Marvel number 9, Submariner number 9, and Marvel Superheroes number 18. So Fantastic Four number 82, we have a wordless cover that is poster worthy.
Yes. And then this cover was repurposed to be the cover of Essential Fantastic Four Volume 4, I believe, because it's so good.
Yes, and it has a panoply of characters highlighted in here. So you've got the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans all charging towards us, or really to our upper right. And it is quite a spectacular cover.
Yes. Crystal, a full member of the group. So when we say the Fantastic Four now, we mean Reed, Ben, Johnny, and Crystal.
Yes. So inside the book, the fabulous FF encounter the Inhumans once more. The mark of the Madman. Conceived, created, and carefully crafted by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby. Embellishment Joe Sinnott. Lettering Artie Simek. So Crystal has declared that she must return to the Inhumans essentially to get their blessing for having joined the FF. You'd think she might do that before joining, but, better late than never, maybe? So she's saying she's got to get their permission. And Reed says on page 2, panel 1, I should have thought of that, young lady. After all, you're still a minor. And just in the previous issue, they were making the point that she's the same age that Sue was when the Fantastic Four formed. So
which makes no sense.
Well, or if it does make sense, then it's something that is a little bit less appropriate in this day and age than it may have been in that day and age.
If you keep in mind that in Fantastic Four number 9, they're talking about how Reed fought World War II and he grew up having a crush on Sue, then it makes no sense.
Oh, yeah. No, that issue number 9 just completely creates problems for everything.
Yes.
So anyway, Johnny flies in. He says there's something going on in the storage room. As it turns out, it is Lockjaw. And we all assume that Lockjaw is there because Crystal wants to go back to the Inhumans, and he must have found some psychics call from her. So he's going to take her there. Johnny is going to join the two of them. But then we see that more figures are coming in through the teleportation screen, as they call it here. And they are Alpha Primitives, the Inhumans' deadly drone race, which is another of those unsettling things about the Inhumans.
Yes.
They have a deadly drone race.
Who look scarier than they've ever looked before. They sort of have vampire teeth this time. They've never had vampire teeth before. I don't know if this is supposed to be an especially evil subspecies of the Alpha Primitives. So it's never really been the case before that Lockjaw would create such a big interdimensional barrier that like an army essentially could run in through his barrier. In addition to him sort of having just half of his body coming out of the barrier. This doesn't really make any sense, but that's what they're doing.
Yep. So the Fantastic Four are fighting the Alpha Primitives. Eventually, though, Crystal says, no, you can't fight them. I'm going to go willingly. And the rest of them don't want to let her go, but they can't stop her. So at this point, they are left behind and are talking about going and getting in their rocket to try to reach the Great Refuge so that they can try to rescue Crystal. We then cut to the Great Refuge and we get a great splash page on page 8 of Maximus in royal regalia on a throne.
With a scepter.
Lording it over everybody. Yes, with a scepter and a massive, I don't even know if you call that a crown. It's a huge, gigantic, like helmet of some sort.
Something like that.
Yes. It's difficult to describe, but he is definitely all decked out because he has taken over the Great Refuge and has deposed Black Bolt.
Yeah. Maximus is maxing and relaxing on his gorgeous throne. So who better to max and relax than Maximus himself? Maximus the Mad.
He is Maximusin and Relaximusin.
He is.
Yes. So, and we see Medusa in the background. He apparently has coated her hair in some sort of chemical that keeps her from being able to use it the way that she wants to. We will find out what happened to the rest of the Inhumans in a little while. Crystal is now brought into his presence and is shown the rest of the Inhumans being imprisoned. So Black Bolt, Gorgon, Triton, and Karnak are all in this transparent, high-tech Kirby Tech cube here.
Mm-hmm.
The Fantastic Four take off in their rocket, and they are able to make it to the other side of the planet, lickety-split.
The rocket shoots way up over the Earth, so, it's out in the exploding Kirby cosmos before it comes back down. So it says, we're so high, it only took us a few seconds to cover half of Earth. So not just a few minutes, mind you, a few seconds.
Right. Although presumably it took them a few minutes to get to the point to where they could take the 2 seconds or whatever.
Exactly.
All right. So they then are approaching the Great Refuge, which they don't specify which set of mountains this is in.
They do. They do.
Where?
So page 13 is the distinct honor, the only page in Marvel history where both halves of the page made the Marvel No Prize book on different pages. The top 2 panels made the Marvel No Prize book because they go, knock it off, Ben. Landing between these Himalayan peaks is risky business. So as they point out in the Marvel No Prize book, that mere months before, when the Hulk had visited the Great Refuge in Hulk Annual #1, they had made it clear it was in the Alps. So then they showed these 2 panels to make it clear that it has changed location again to the Himalayas. And then the bottom 2 panels of the page, the Fantastic Four then land. They see the Great Refuge, and then as they enter Attilan, as they enter the Great Refuge, Reed pauses to say, look, portions of the Great Barrier, which we once destroyed, still remain as grim reminders. Then it's got a little asterisk, and the asterisk says, it happened a few years ago, remember, when the FF finally reunited Chris and Johnny. Well, in fact, as they point out in the Marvel No Prize book, this is entirely untrue. The Fantastic Four were off fighting Dr. Doom. They had nothing to do with Black Bolt breaking down the Great Barrier, freeing the Inhumans, and then Crystal and Lockjaw took off to go reunite with Johnny. without Ben and Johnny and Reed having had anything to do with knocking down the Great Barrier or reuniting Chris and Johnny.
Well, and then also, hadn't the Inhumans relocated to some island in the Mediterranean or something like that? And
don't try to keep track of where the Inhumans live. It's pointless. But no, I think that happened after. I think they were still. Yeah, I think that they had said at the time that the barrier was broken that they were living in the Himalayas. So at least that tracks.
Right. But I'm just saying that I thought that they had relocated since then to someplace else. So they're not really doing a good job keeping track of where this thing is.
No, but the Marvel No Prize book did a good job keeping track of this page.
So the Fantastic Four are in Adelan and no one seems to be greeting them in any way. So they make their way further into the city and are attacked by a giant robot of some sort. Or I think it's a robot. I don't know. Maybe this is an Inhuman who looks like a robot called Zor. Zor welcomes you in the name of His Majesty Maximus. And Reed says, Maximus, then our worst fears are realized. Black Bolt was dethroned. A madman wears the crown. So they continue to fight Zor, whatever the nature of Zor happens to be. And they are eventually defeated by Zor. The deposed Inhumans in their transparent cage are once again still trying to get out, and I find it interesting that Karnak is specifically listed as being a master of karate, which I don't have they said that specifically in the past.
I mean, it's always been pretty clear he was doing karate chops, but I'm not sure they ever actually said he was doing karate.
Right, which doesn't make much sense for him to know specifically a Japanese martial art. But at the end, it's clear that Maximus is not satisfied with ruling the Inhumans. He wants to rule the humans as well. And he's got a weapon which is going to help him do this, a hypno gun, which will soon send its matchless rays across the entire planet. Next, shall man survive? So a really fun action-packed issue. I like the art. The story is engaging, even if there is a big question in terms of where the heck is the Great Refuge.
Oh, yeah. They just cannot keep that straight. And again, as we said in the past, it's entirely believable enough that they would have multiple Great Refuges, but they've never made that clear. And one gets the feeling they're just messing up.
Yeah.
But a couple of things about this issue. Why? At the beginning, she's like, I want to go to Adelan. I want to go to the Great Refuge. Let's go ahead and have Lockjaw come and transport me. And then a bunch of goons come running through the portal and kidnap her and drag her through the portal. And it's like, but she was going willingly.
Yes.
Why kidnap her if she's going willingly? All you did was alert the Fantastic Four to the fact that something was wrong. But I guess maybe they wanted to. That's not clear. It's interesting that almost every page in this book is a 4-panel or 3-panel page or a splash. There's been this big change in Marvel Comics since they switched to having a smaller page size for the original art, that people have started doing larger panels. No issue makes that more clear than this issue. There are 3 5-panel pages, page 7, 18, and 20, but all of the other pages are either 1, 3, or 4 panels. It's also really interesting that Marvel Comics have been looking, I'm reading the original versions, not the recolored Marvel Unlimited versions. And Marvel Comics have been looking so much better recently, and that they finally solved their registration problem. The art and the color were not registered properly for a long time. This is how we think of old comics from the 50s looking, where the skin tone starts a centimeter below the face, and then the hair color starts a centimeter below the hairline. And everything, all the color is slightly off. And that's not happening anymore. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that Marvel has gotten its act together sometime in the last year or so. And the books look so much better, closer to the books that you're looking at on Marvel Unlimited. Mm-hmm. I just say at the end, this is very much a retread of previous Maximus Inhuman stories. Whether you want to say Kirby or Lee is retreading, then you can. I say, but it's got beautiful artwork, so I can't complain.
Okay. And thanks for making the point about Crystal intending to go to the Inhumans and then getting kidnapped to go to the Inhumans as well. I had noted that at one point when I was reading it, but had forgotten to bring that up. And that definitely jumps out as a storytelling what?
Mhm.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on. I think we decided we are next doing Captain Marvel. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay. So why don't you do Captain Marvel number 9?
Okay, so Captain Marvel number 9, a bad buck. We begin with a big tease. Where the cover is by Colin, where just this seems like it's pretty clearly by Colin to me, with Captain Marvel jumping up, fighting in a way that is unclear what he's actually doing. He is fighting the Akon. Peace out. Again, I'm tempted to start singing Akon songs, but I won't do it. So then he is fighting the Akon, who are on little flying discs and shooting at him. He's seemingly shooting back at them, but not in a way that he's normally capable of doing. But this is clearly a Colin cover, maybe inked by, I don't know, DeMeo, let's say. But then, so you start to get your hopes up that Colin will be back on the insides. But then, you open up the book and it says Captain Marvel Between Hammer and Anvil. This astral extravaganza, produced by Stan Lee, written by Arnold Drake, penciled by Don Heck, inked by Vince Colletta, lettered by Sam Rosen. So we've got Heck and Colletta, Marvel's gruesome twosome, doing the art on the inside. And it is not good. Again, we pick up with what we just saw on the cover, with the Akon on their little flying disc shooting at Captain Marvel.
And I have to say, I like the simplicity of the Akon flying discs.
Yeah.
And they're not discs. They're really more like little donuts that they're standing on.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
I think, I don't know. That's how it's colored here, at least. But on the cover, it looks more like discs.
Yeah.
Here, it looks more like donuts. But one way or the other, I like the simplicity of them.
Yeah. And I like donuts. So, so then they're flying around. He's shooting back at them. The battle seems to end inconsequentially. Meanwhile, Carol Danvers, remember last issue, we had one of the most inane plot turns in Marvel Comics history when Captain Marvel was investigating Walter Lawson, the character who had died in an early Captain Marvel issue, and then Captain Marvel had taken on Walter Lawson as his own secret identity. And then it finally occurred to him, like, I'm going to investigate and find out just who Walter Lawson was, which is fine. That's an entirely fine thing for him to do. But then he's like, and I'm going to work on this mystery with Carol Danvers, the head of security for the base, and she'll be my partner in investigation here. And it's like, no, she is Walter Lawson's boss. Why would you want her investigating Walter Lawson? That's the last thing you want, because that is your whole way into her world. That is your whole way into her life. That is your secret identity. Why are you throwing your own secret identity under the bus? It made no sense. Well, now, in fact, he has piqued her curiosity. She is investigating. She bribes her way into Walter Lawson's hotel room. But just then, the giant robot from last issue, which was destroyed but was repairing itself, comes in and bursts in. Well, bizarrely, this is a robot that Walter Lawson, the real Walter Lawson, invented and then sent it to destroy himself, I guess, just to test his own robot, going, let's see if you can pass the ultimate test, destroying me, your very creator. And then the robot has figured out, pretty clever robot, to kidnap Carol Danvers, figured out where Walter Lawson lives, figured out to kidnap Carol Danvers from there, use her as a hostage. Then Captain Marvel turns back into Walter Lawson, which should be the last thing he does, because at this point he's sicked the whole world on himself. But he turns back into Walter Lawson, finds his wrecked apartment, his wrecked rented room, and we see the robot has taken Carol back to Walter Lawson's futuristic home, and
which they specifically describe as a mountain lab, because they're in Florida, and we are all familiar with the famous mountains of Florida.
Good point. And so then Marvel figures out what's going on, decides to fly there. We briefly cut to Una and Yanrog up in the Kree ship, and Una is, of course, crying, as she always is.
Has she never not been crying?
Has she never not been? And then the Akon, meanwhile, have also figured out to go to Walter Lawson's house. So everybody is converging. The Akon, the giant robot, Carol Danvers, and Captain Marvel. And they get in a big fight. Really, really terrible art on almost every page here. Nothing could be sloppier. Page 10, really weak splash page of the giant robot fighting Captain Marvel. And then page 11, Vince Colletta using way too many lines on Captain Marvel's back. They are zapping at each other for quite some time.
Well, when you say way too many lines, I've got to say that, Neil Adams is going to use a lot of lines to do something like that. It's just a matter of they're not working well. It's a lot of lines that aren't doing much of anything, as opposed to certain styles where you can have a lot of lines to define something, but they're actually defining something well.
Yeah, these are just messy back muscles. So then the Akon attack, the Akon get into it with the robot. I'm not sure what they have against each other, but they're pounding on each other as well. And then finally, Captain Marvel does sort of a clever trick where he takes out Walter Lawson's address book and figures out that that's a way to get them to attack each other and get them all to destroy each other, because they all think it's a Kree code book. They all think it is a book of Kree codes. And he says, and after they destroy each other, he retrieves it and he thinks, here is the little item that destroyed both CyberX and the Akon. It was only Lawson's personal address book, but it had his scent upon it. I knew that would lure the robot, so I printed the legend code Z19 on the cover in Kree, knowing the Akon would grab at it. The secret code they couldn't understand was nothing but a list of Lawson's girlfriends with an apostrophe after the S. Nothing but a list of Lawson's girlfriends, plural, phone number in Earth alphabet. So it turns out that Walter Lawson, who I guess this is the original Walter Lawson, not Captain Marvel in disguise, had a little black book filled with girls' phone numbers in it. And this was able, by putting a Kree code on the cover, got everybody fighting over this, thinking that it was a code book. But in fact, it's just a list of ladies, girlfriends, apostrophe after the S, who Walter Lawson had on speed dial. And they killed one another.
Lawson had a little black book.
They killed one another for a dead man's phone book. Yes, so it was the original Lawson's book. And then we get to, so on page 17, we get Carol Danvers crying over Captain Marvel. And then we get to the final page, and Una is crying again over Captain Marvel on page 20. So Hoo Boy, he may not have a little black book, but he did inherit one from his secret identity. And he is good at making the ladies cry. Captain Marvel is. And so that is the end of the issue. This is a pretty terrible book. I like how the hero does something a little bit clever. Okay, I like that. And, the plotting is not terrible in terms of bringing together all of these elements all in one place and then having them all knock each other out due to something clever the hero does. I guess I'm winning myself over on the plotting. The plotting's not terrible, but hoo boy, I'm tired of all these ladies crying. I wish they had a little more self-respect and self-awareness, and the art is just terrible throughout.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good. Let's see. Did I have anything else to add? I guess there's just at one point when Marvel is on the ropes, he's saying to Carol, "Leave, woman, while you still draw breath. Escape." And she says, "No, Captain Marvel. If you die here, I must too." It's like, why?
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. It's, he's the superhero. You're the non-superhero. He's trying to save you. Just let yourself be saved. Yeah. Anyway, this is a frustrating book.
Yes, it's been frustrating is one word for it. Terrible is another word. And I would go so far as say terrible. It was unfair of them to, even though Colin's work on this book wasn't great, it was unfair of them to tease us with a Colin cover if he wasn't going to do the inside. But I'd say we can move on.
All right. So we're going to move on to a book that I was excited for and disappointed by, personally. Marvel Superheroes presents Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's Marvel Superheroes issue number 18. This is a 25-cent oversized book that I presume the rest of it was all reprints of old Golden Age stuff.
It is.
But they have this one lead feature with these new characters. So we see on the cover the characters who we will come to know as Vance Astro, Charlie 27, Martin X, and Yondu. But it is a wordless cover, and we do not get any of that.
Mm-hmm. So anyone who is going back through Marvel Comics history and looking at this book going like, ooh, exciting, the first appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy of beloved MCU fame, will be pretty disappointed, first of all, by this cover. They're like, where's Peter Quill? Where's Gamora? And they're going to be like, this is pretty disappointing. Now, if the cover was colored better, then they would at least recognize Yondu, who is the only character of these four to go on and play a significant part in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Vance Astro and Trillion 27 have not appeared at all in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Martin X appeared just briefly, I think, in two of them. And Yondu was a major character with a different personality, but he does have the blue skin, the red mohawk, and the arrow that he can make fly around by whistling, which is all part of this issue. But he was miscolored on the cover, so that is not clear now, from the inside.
I haven't watched it in a while, but I thought that in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they did essentially maneuver these characters together for one sort of hero shot. At one point. And so I thought we had seen all of these characters, at least in a little cameo. Did we not?
I just remember Martin X and Yondu. I don't remember Charlie 27 or Vance Astro appearing at all in those three movies.
Okay. All right. I will have to go back and rewatch that and see what I'm remembering.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing a complete MCU rewatch just to have something to exercise to while I work out in the morning. But I've not done it.
Right. Okay. So anyway, let's get into this and get it over with.
See, I disagree. I like this issue.
Really?
I can cover it if you'd prefer. I like this issue a fair amount. I have an issue with Colin Tech. I think Colin Tech is not the best tech, but I think this issue is a lot of fun.
I'm not a big fan of this. So if you would like to give this issue the attention that you think it deserves, then you can feel free to do this one, and I'll do Submariner.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and cover it. Let's go ahead and jump in and discuss Guardians of the Galaxy: Earth Shall Overcome, which is sort of throughout this issue, they're sort of, doing like it's space revolutionaries. And so they borrow the Earth anthem, We Shall Overcome. And I'm like, yes, but that just calls attention to the fact that all of these space revolutionaries are white or really two of them are white. One of them's white. One of them is covered in insulated cellophane. So we can't be sure if he's white. One is crystal colored and one is blue. So they aren't all white, but none of them are black. I can tell you that much. And so maybe they shouldn't be singing We Shall Overcome. But okay. So then we begin with Charlie 27. This, I like his look. He grew up on, it's unclear if he grew up on Jupiter itself, which of course has no surface, or if he grew up on Jove, which is a moon of Jupiter, because they make it.
Is there a moon? Is there a moon called Jove?
Is there? I thought there was.
I don't think so. I think that Jovian is an adjective talking about referring to the gas giant planets. Or Jovian is just an adjective describing things of Jupiter.
Okay. Yes. Jupiter's moons form a satellite system colloquially referred to as the Jovian system. Okay. So Jovian means having to do with Jupiter. Okay. I thought there was a moon called Jove. I don't know, because they called him Jovian. But no, I guess Jovian just refers to the planets of the system. Anyway, I look like an idiot. So it says he was born on planet Jupiter, which is a hard thing to do given that it has no surface. But because he grew up on a planet with high gravity, he's very squat. He's very squat and strong and thick. And I kind of like this look of his. It's got a very wide face.
I like the concept of it, and I've seen it executed better. I do not like the execution of it here in this issue.
Yeah.
It looks like they poured a face into a too wide plexiglass cylinder or something like that. I like the concept, but not the execution.
Yeah. You think he sort of looks like one of the most horrific things in the MCU, their version of MODOK that they had in
yes.
Ant-Man Quantumania.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So then he lands again. It's pretty clear he is not landing here on Jupiter. He's landing on a moon, I think. Correct?
I don't know.
He lands somewhere, either on Jupiter or on one of Jupiter's moons. And then he is expecting, I think, a hero's welcome here, but instead he runs into giant scaly aliens, and it turns out these are the same aliens that Silver Surfer fought a couple of issues ago, the Badoon. And at the time they had said, when Silver Surfer sent the Badoon away, they had said, oh, they'll show up again in a book in a couple of months. And it turns out this is that book. So they didn't actually come back for, I guess, 1,000 years. And here they are many years later. I guess, yeah, it's the year 3007. So almost exactly 1,000 years later, or 1,040 years later, I guess. So then they 40, 30, I can't do math, 40 years, 1,040 years later. So then he goes ahead and fights them off. And I like the battling here. I like Colin's fight sequences.
Oh, and I'll point out that this branch of the Badoon Empire that's here is the eastern zone of the Badoon Empire, because concepts like east make sense in outer space.
Yes. So then he makes it to the Jupiter teleport station, the living matter transmitter. And he goes ahead and teleports himself 1.5 billion miles to Pluto.
On that page, panel 3 on page 6, can you defend that panel?
He is leaping towards us with a leg kicked up way in the air while they are shooting at him. I think it's fine. I think it's a very Colony panel. He's got a kick. He's kicking.
All right. I'm not a fan, but no. We'll go.
So then he teleports himself to Pluto. They could not have known that Pluto would no longer be a planet a mere 30 years later, much less 1,040 years later. And says, Pluto, well, one planet's as good as another for what I have to do, find an army. And the Badoon, it turns out, are here too, and they are patrolling with giant winged dogs, winged vampire fanged dogs, which look pretty scary. And they all come after Charlie 27, but then a man covered in crystal goes ahead and rescues Charlie 27. This, it turns out, is Martinex. Do they explain why he's crystal covered?
Well, I think it's just because they're on Pluto, and Pluto is cold and small. And I got the impression that it was just because it was the body modification they've done to be able to live on Pluto without spacesuits.
Okay.
But is it just me, or does he have some sort of a communicator built into his forehead? I was not quite able to figure out what was going on with that. Yeah, last panel on page 9, then the first panel on page 10.
Yep. It's pretty strange. He goes ahead, and now they're teamed up. They go ahead and get, I guess, back in the teleport machine, and they go to the planet Earth, where the Badoon are here as well, and they have kidnapped 2 heroes. One guy covered in purple cellophane, and another guy who is blue with, we will find out, a bow and arrow. Turns out the guy covered in purple cellophane.
Well, they say it's copper. Which,
that makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't look like copper, but they say that it's a copper suit of some sort.
So he has an interesting origin. I've always liked Vance Astro's origin, where they go to the year 1988, which of course was pretty far. It wasn't even that far in the future when they made this comic in 1968. They should have known that they would still be publishing Guardians of the Galaxy comics 20 years later. You know, I guess Marvel was still sort of in this time of like, look, this whole thing's going to fall apart within seconds. You know, we don't have to worry about anything long term. But they go ahead and tell the story about 1988. Earthmen now had a small moon colony operating, and the first landings on Mars had taken place. Of course, neither of those things ever happened. As of our recording this in 2026, says, but now we were striking for the stars themselves. And they decide they're going to send their first astronaut to another star system. And the only way to do that is to put someone in suspended animation for 1,000 years. And they go ahead, and even though he has a girlfriend, this is it for her, because he is going to go ahead and be put in suspended animation for 1,000 years. Have a good 365,000 nights sleep, Major Astro.
And it looks like their suspended animation thing looks like he literally is packed in ice cubes.
Yes. Says, even at our present maximum speed of 10.6, you still couldn't reach the nearest star in 10 lifetimes. Of course, if we could travel beyond the speed of light. And Vance Astro says, forget it, Doc. Einsteinian physics says that's impossible.
Although, of course, how many different alien interstellar contacts have we had at this point in Marvel Comics?
That is an excellent question. At this point, heroes from other star systems or villains from other star systems have made it to Earth many times. So they should have known by 1988 that this was entirely possible. And indeed, they do discover that, because he then goes in suspended animation for 1,000 years and lands on this other star system and finds a bunch of Earthlings to welcome him. And he's like, Earthlings? But it can't be. How could you beat me here? And they're like, Harkovian physics, old man. It replaced Einstein's 800 years ago. So it turns out there is a way people could transport themselves from star to star much quicker. But for some reason, they couldn't wake him up early. So they couldn't go to his rocket and go like, wake up. We have no problem going to other star systems now. But so they just decided to wait. And when he landed, greet him as a hero. But even though he his entire mission was entirely for naught. But so then I kind of like that as an origin for somebody. He's also got telekinetic powers for some reason. They're going ahead and fighting the Badoon. We get to the thing that we actually know from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. We get to Vance Astro fires off Yondu's arrow, and Yondu does some whistling and makes it fly around. And of course, we've seen very cool things in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies of the flying arrow whizzing around and killing a bunch of people. Presumably that happens here too. The Badoon don't seem to be doing very well. And then they go ahead and take off, and they get united with Charlie 27 and Martin X, and they are all fighting the Badoon. And then in a flash, all are transported through space to New York, which took the worst pacing at all from the Badoon. But they say that the free colony started here. I do not believe it, Major. It is no free colony. Everybody dead is no, I think they meant to say, is no colony free. Everyone dead or slave. Says, my friends, I'm the old man here by about 10 centuries, and I say we can find the free colony. Listen, there was a struggle song they sang in my time. It's still good if you alter it a bit. Try it with me. Earth shall overcome. Earth shall overcome. Earth shall overcome someday. And then they go ahead and stand in the blazing rubble of New York, and they sing their song, and it says, thus were they united, thus do they live, and thus perhaps shall they die. But while life endures, they will challenge the baneful Badoon, and one day legends will spring up in worlds yet unborn about those who shall be called the Guardians of the Galaxy. The end for now. So we haven't talked about, so Arnold Drake was created in some of the all-time greatest comics. Arnold Drake created Deadman, which is one of my favorites, and he created the Doom Patrol, which is also one of my favorites. Deadman, he was replaced very quickly by a series of writers, including Neil Adams himself. Neil Adams took over the art, starting with the second issue of Deadman, and then Drake was gone off the writing and replaced by Bob Haney and Neil Adams himself and Bob Kanigher and various people. And they did a great job, better job than Drake had done writing his own character. Drake also created the Doom Patrol, and Doom Patrol was not at its very best until 30 years later when Grant Morrison was writing the book. But they were great concepts. Doom Patrol was a great concept. Deadman was a great concept. And so at first I was excited when Arnold Drake came over here to Marvel Comics. But all Drake has been doing so far is working on old Stan Lee characters and has really not been excelling. He has not been doing a great job on Captain Marvel. He has not been doing a great job on the X-Men. And when we got to this book, I'm excited again. Like, oh, it's Arnold Drake creating his own characters. He's good at that. And indeed, I think these are good characters. And I think this is a good concept. And I think that they will get a good 40 years out of stories out of these characters before they entirely give up on them and create a new Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the one that you might be familiar with in the MCU and is essentially an entirely different group. But first, you have 40 years of stories of these characters. These characters this is sort of a pilot for them to get their own series. That pilot failed. They are not given their own series until about 10 years later when they don't get their own series under the name Guardians of the Galaxy, but they do become the running feature in Marvel Presents with Steve Gerber writing and Al Milgrom on art. And they did, I think, 9 issues there. And then eventually they were given their own book in the 90s with Jim Valentino on writing and art. And it's a good book. And so these characters fighting for the future, I think at that point, the Badoon had been defeated in their various Steve Gerber, because Steve Gerber not only wrote about them in Marvel Premiere, but he had them as recurring guest stars on Marvel 2-in-1 and these various books Steve Gerber was writing at the time. And then in the post-Badoon years, they had a good Jim Valentino run, and that book ran for 62 issues until they finally replaced them with an entirely different Guardians of the Galaxy set in modern day. Starting in 2008 or so, and then these characters have rarely been seen since. But I think these are good characters. I think that this is a good launch. I really don't like the colon tech. I think that Cohen's inventing of spaceships is not great. I think Cohen's inventing of, everything is just very weird and bendy. The teleport station, all of the cities, it's not great. But I like this issue a lot. I guess I liked it more than you, Steve. What did you think of this issue, Steve?
Yeah, I was not a big fan. And, with Charlie 27, I do have to say that even when I was a 12-year-old or whatever, it bothered me that Charlie 27 was supposed to have grown up on Jupiter when I knew that Jupiter was a gas giant. I'm like, how does that work? I'm calling BS on this one. This is where my willing suspension of disbelief comes up against a brick wall. For Vance Astro, I guess later he ends up somehow with Captain America's shield, does he not?
Yes.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened here yet. They do say that he has to stay completely sealed inside this purple copper envelope, or else if it's punctured, he will age 1,000 years in one moment, essentially crumble to dust. And I'm like, so how do you eat and how do you poop?
Steve.
That's something that always jumps out at me as well with these sorts of things. I'm like, there are certain biological functions that need to happen here that isn't showing up. I find it interesting that they make it clear that there is essentially racial prejudice between different members of these planetary federation peoples. Martin X, when he is discovered by Charlie 27, Charlie 27 says, "Oh, look, it's a Pluvian," as they call the people in Pluto. And he says, "Don't you mean a rockhead? Isn't that what you call us?" And then Charlie 27 says something about like, "Hey, this is no time for a race war," or something like that, which I find to be an interesting concept, although clumsily introduced. And it is interesting also that Yondu is not descended from humanity. Yondu is one of the natives of the planet that Vance Astro landed on, which had been colonized by humans, but they say that he was a native of that planet, if I'm not mistaken, if I read things correctly. And so he has a different speech pattern from other folks. So I think on that thing that you were reading earlier that you were getting a little bit confused about, or thought that they had been confused about, I think that's supposed to be his speech patterns, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, with the whole thing is that the free colony started here. I do not believe it, Major. Is no free colony. Everybody dead or slave.
Okay.
I think that's what's going on there. Anyway, I was disappointed by this introduction to these characters. Hopefully, if we see them again anytime in the near future, we will have things better executed. But you say we're not going to see much of them for a while?
No. We're not going to see them again in the 60s, I don't think. Oh, well, there's only 1 year left in the 60s, but I don't think we're going to see them again until they become, Steve Gerber goes ahead and starts writing about them in various books that he does, mainly in the Thing stories in Marvel 2 and 1. And then I think they finally deal with the bad dude in there, but then they get their own book written by Gerber in Marvel Presents for 11 issues or so with Milgram on art that is pretty good. Let me read my notes. Yeah, so it's interesting. We have DeMeo inking Cohen. Have we ever seen that? They've both been at Marvel for years.
I don't think so. I think this might be a first.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I think that DeMeo's doing a good job on Cohen. I wouldn't say he's the most ideal inker for Cohen. I think Klein or Palmer are better, but I think he's doing a pretty good job. So once again, we have crazy panel borders, even crazier than some of the others that he has done, even crazier than some of the Daredevil panels he did. And it's interesting, those are happening on lots of books, not just Cohen books this month. So to the extent that I'm starting to think this is just the Marvel style, that Marvel is dictating that people do these crazy panel borders. But it's interesting how good Cohen is at them, because on some of the other books this month, they'll start doing crazy panel borders for the first time, and it won't be clear what to read next. And so on Iron Man this month, they're doing crazy panel borders by Tesca, and it's unclear on almost every page what order to read the panels in. And it just shows how well Cohen has been doing with his crazy panel borders, and that I never wonder that in these books.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't read that issue yet, so I would not yet know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Should So I've been doing a lot of books here. You want to go ahead and do
Yes.
Wrap us up with Submariner?
I will do so. So Prince Namor the Submariner, the spell of the serpent. And on the cover, we have Namor chained to a stone block that looks like a human sacrifice type setup. While a woman who we will find out is Dorma, wearing the serpent crown, is lording it over him.
Seemingly Marie Severin cover, Marie Severin inked by Dan Atkins, and I think it is a beautiful cover. So this brings us to the inside. I don't mean to jump in and cover everything this month, but so I should point out that John Buscema is gone. He did the first 8 issues of this book and did a great job. And so we see on the cover here that this is Marie Severin and Dan Atkins taking over this issue. And I think they also do a great job. Do you agree?
Yes, I like the art in this. I think that Dan Adkins does a really nice job bringing out the best in Marie.
Yes.
As opposed to, sometimes when I see her work, I love the work in concept, but the final execution of the art, I sometimes am somewhat disappointed in. But I think that this combo works out quite nicely.
Yeah.
So, a Submariner saga of almost unparalleled majesty by Stan Lee editor, Roy Thomas writer, Marie Severin artist, Dan Adkins inker, Sam Rosen letterer. The spell of the serpent. So we see Submariner holding the helmet of power, which seems to be glowing, while Dorma is there in the room with him. And she is fascinated by this thing and seems to be called by the siren call to try to put it on her head, at which point Namor smacks it out of her hands and is like, I'm sorry, that's not kind of what I meant to do, but you can't be doing that. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they are in a ship where they're returning from the surface world, and they find, essentially New Atlantis, and they make it there. It's clear that Lord Seth had essentially been defeated by Tiger Shark in the previous storyline, and he is currently feeling
some kind of way.
Yes. Good way of putting it. So Namor greets Vashti, and I think, is this character Ichthon a new character, or have we seen him in the past?
He may be new.
He may be new, or he might be a character who's been around but it hasn't been named before. But I think that Ichthon is a reference to the Greek word for fish, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so we may have seen him as like the lead scientist of Atlantis in the past, but one way or the other, he's named Ichthon, and Submariner tasks him with studying the helmet of power. Then asks about Tiger Shark and is saying, have we found a way to cure him yet? Submariner feels responsible for trying to cure the guy, even though I don't see a need for him to be responsible for that. It turns out the only way that Tiger Shark can be cured is by getting some kind of special herb of healing, which is only available in what is it, the Abyss of Doom or something like that.
That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, what is the name of it? Yes, that's actually the name of it, the Abyss of Doom. I thought I was exaggerating there, but I was not. So Submariner seems to recognize that Seth is not doing well mentally at the moment. So he says, no, I must have you with me to join me to go to the Abyss of Doom, because only you, because I need the best and you're the best. So they head off. Meanwhile, spontaneously, it would seem, the helmet of power cracks and sheds its outer layer, and underneath we find the 7-headed serpent crown, which, as you have pointed out, goes on to have a storied history in Marvel Comics.
Yes, to the extent where later they have the Atlantis Attack storyline that connects up 20 annuals in, I want to say, 1991, and the Serpent Crown is such a major element of that storyline that then it has its own backup feature doing just the history of the Serpent Crown, which is like takes 20 issues to do to cover the whole history of the Serpent Crown, starting with when it was the Helmet of Power. But my main problem here, for one thing, it just makes, there's very little justification or explanation of how the Helmet of Power becomes the Serpent Crown here, why it cracks, why this comes out from the center. The whole off-panel reason for this seems to be that they just decided this helmet that people have been fighting over just didn't look cool enough. And they're like, we should go ahead and replace this with something that looks a little cooler. But one of the problems is that the Helmet of Power wasn't big enough to contain the Serpent Crown. The Serpent Crown is bigger than the Helmet of Power was. So it's not like it was just covered in mortar or something. This was expanded and exploded to take up more room than the original helmet took up. And they just seem to go like, it should look cooler. It should have a cooler name. This is an object for the ages. Let's make it into a 7-headed serpent, which is, I think, a good instinct, but it just makes no sense.
I don't know. I think that it is plausible enough that this serpent crown could have fit inside the Helmet of Power, that it had just been sort of cemented inside sort of an exoskeleton, as it were. I don't know. I can buy it.
Okay.
Personally. All right. So they head off right as the serpent crown cracks out from the old Helmet of Power. They get to the Abyss of Doom. They're fighting some kind of big sea serpent. Seth drops his spear, or what do they call it here? His warpoon, and is going after it, and heedless of his own safety. And so Submariner has to save him from the creature. But as he does that, he ends up triggering one of this creature's natural defenses, which has some sort of venom or poison or something like that that comes out of it, that then causes the person it hits to lose their memory. So
the name of the beast is the Deadly Letha Beast, as it is introduced on page 6. Now, those of us who have read X-Men comics know that at one point when they were down under the earth fighting Mole Man and Tyrannus, that they found the old Letha River from Greek mythology there, and it was a river that anyone who smelled its fumes forgot who they were. And so then here they're fighting the Deadly Letha Beast, and it's like, why is it called that? Is it because it makes you forget who you are? And then indeed we find out on the next page that it also releases some sort of gas that makes you forget who you are. This is strange. This is a very strange power, but it kind of works.
Yeah, I think it works. Thank you for making that connection. I had not made that connection. So Submariner forgets who he is. He just goes swimming away, leaves Seth back behind where he was. We then see that Dorma seems to be scheming to get her hands on the Helmet of Power, which is now the Serpent Crown. It's as though she is being called to it in some way, and she is then trying to get her way to get a piece of it. Seth comes to the conclusion that Submariner must have been killed, and that this was partially his fault for not being a good enough warrior. So then he goes into self-exile. After a number of days, Submariner recovers his memory of who he is, and heads straight on back to Atlantis. He's like, oh, well, Seth must have made it back to Atlantis already and told them that I was dead, so they must be expecting me to not come back. So he shows up and he says, "Hail, guard of the realm, give the word, your sovereign is come again." And the guard says Atlantis has no sovereign except Naga, and then shoots him with a ray. So Submariner, partially because he is weakened from his ordeal of memorylessness, and partially because he is biding his time, allows himself to be strapped to a giant fish and hauled back into Atlantis. And he is going to be set up as a human sacrifice. And so we have a great splash page on page 12 of sort of this orgy of bloodlust going on the steps of this altar that looks like it was made for human sacrifice. It's just really, really well done.
Yes, a bunch of writhing, a bunch of Atlanteans with some of them have curved daggers in their hands, who are all sort of writhing and dancing and getting ready for this human sacrifice. It is gorgeous art by Severin and Adkins.
And there are some snake-looking helmets that people are wearing, helmets and armbands and various things like that. So clearly there's a snake theme going on here. So then it turns out that the person running Atlantis at this point is Dorma, wearing the serpent crown. And she says, "I am here to pronounce sentence upon the unbeliever. Deathless Naga has heard and speaks now through his appointed priestess. Let the sacrifice begin." And so at this point, Submariner has heard enough. He goes ahead and breaks out because, of course, he's is one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. So it's hard to tie the guy up. He starts fighting the people who are trying to sacrifice him and is able to snatch the serpent crown off of Dorma's head. And he's berating his people for their fitful flight towards paganism. It says, Namor has the helmet. Who now dares stand against him? Then we hear, I dare, you spineless scum. And it's Tiger Shark. Now, Tiger Shark is a weird line here on page 15, panel 3. Mm-hmm. He says, believe it, Blue Nose. Well, first, Blue Nose is an odd term.
For Submariner, who does not have a blueness.
Right. Everybody else is blue here, but Submariner. Yes. I wonder, is that something like a blue blood or something like that?
Well, somebody else, another Atlantean, has just called out Tiger Shark. And then he says, believe it, Blue Nose. So I think he was referring to that guy.
Yes. All right. But then he says, yes, Namor, it's Tiger Shark. Busting out was easy with everybody making like Section 8s.
Yes.
Which,
do you know what that means?
Well, I mean, Section 8 housing, like public housing.
Oh, right. I guess I'm confused. What is it if you're considered too crazy to join the army? What was Klinger always trying to get on MASH?
I don't know. That would make more sense than subsidized housing would. Yes. Because Section 8 is what subsidized housing is sometimes referred to as. Yes. So, but if that's also just happens to be a reference to being considered mentally unfit for the military, then that would make a lot more sense.
What does Section 8 mean in slang? Yes, Section 8 has two entirely different meanings. It can refer to low-income housing, or it can refer to military slang for crazy. Historically, Section 8 was a category of discharge from the U.S. military given to service members judged mentally unfit for duty. Because of this, calling someone or something a Section 8 or saying they are Section 8 became military or pop cultural slang for someone acting erratically, crazy, or unstable.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
I was like, what on earth?
Yes.
All right. So the people of Atlantis are still under the thrall of this helmet, even though he's ripped it off of Dorma's head. And so he's like, I must destroy this thing, tries to destroy it, and it seems to be indestructible. Mm-hmm. So there's not much he can do. So he flees with it. And then he's like, well, I got to figure out what's going on in this thing. And the only way I can think of to do that is to put it on. So he puts it on and says, my brain. Suddenly it is filled with sounds no ear has known, colors which bring throbbing pain. And there's sort of a psychedelic effect going on around him as this is happening on page 17. And then he has a vision of a reptilian face looking down and a picture of the globe with extra continents in the middle of the Atlantic and the middle of the Pacific. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. It then continues in his head that apparently the Earth was about to start tilting off its axis, which brings to mind what just happened in Hulk. But this is apparently something that happened millions of years ago, or at least thousands of years ago. And there were the race of Atlantis, which was in the Antarctic region, then has to go because of this change in the axis. But for some reason, they're like, then it's agreed. Half our race shall flee to the sea of turbulence, the other to the even larger sea of tranquility. It may be that our two peoples shall never meet again, but if they do, let us pray it shall be in peace. I don't see a reason why they have to split off into two different directions. That doesn't seem to be explained in any way. And then these two extra continents seem to sink into the water. And I guess that's when the Atlanteans are there. It's a little unclear.
But the Sea of Tranquility is also on the moon, which makes this all the more confusing. When I think of the Sea of Tranquility, I think of an area on the moon with that name.
I was assuming that, since Pacific means peace, means peaceful, that meant the Pacific Ocean. The even larger Sea of Tranquility would be the Pacific Ocean.
But it's confusing.
It is confusing, yes. So then Submariner drops the helmet, but then he's like, oh, well, I guess I need to still get the helmet. It's still dangerous to leave around. So he starts swimming down to get it. And then as he's reaching for it, he hears, in that case, Namor, all the more reason why I should possess it. And some hand that looks cloaked in shadow or maybe in a black glove, it's sort of hard to tell, is reaching out to grab the helmet first.
Yes.
Next, the Questers, Questers. So overall, I like the art combo in this issue. I think it is quite good. I love the look of the Serpent Crown. It is nice to get that object of power introduced into the Marvel Universe. I will point out that he returns to find that his people have succumbed politically to a NAGA movement, which has them all, anyway. So, anyway, yeah.
That's, if only they were all wearing NAGA baseball caps.
Well, they're all wearing hats of various sorts,
That's true.
Snake themed hats. So, anyway, sorry, I try not to make too many political comments in here, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That one is coming right at me and I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this is a really good issue. I think that the Serpent Crown is a great new addition to the Marvel Universe, even if it's just a slight variation on a crown they've already been fighting over for the last couple of issues. As I say in my notes, Buscema will be missed, but just a little bit, because Severin and Atkins are pretty great. I love the anatomy in this issue. I love the tech. Really nice Severin architecture, nice Severin tech on the ship that they're traveling home in at the beginning. I like the looks of the serpent cult and the looks of the giant serpent creature at the end and the whole history that he's unveiling. Everything just looks really beautiful in this issue. Atkins is doing a great job adding weight and depth and shadow to Severin's pencils. Better job than he did on Hulk this month, inking Trimpe. I realize it's confusing because he was replacing a different Severin as inker on that book. This is Marie Severin we're doing here. It was John Severin who was missing this month. I end with beautiful issue. Serpent Crown will be Marvel object for the ages, and it has a nice debut. I like Naga.
Yes.
Naga, people. Naga. I like Naga.
Naga. All right. So, yeah, there we have it. That is it for this issue, and that is it for what I have to say about it. Do you have any further notes?
And that is it for the middle of the month of January 1969. I think that we've covered some good books today. We've covered some weak books, good Fantastic Four, good Submariner, very weak Captain Marvel, and we're split on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, I say that is a fair assessment.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Again, as always, please like or review our show on whatever your podcatcher is. We've got a Patreon. Tell anybody you know that might be interested. And I think that's about it.
Great. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out. We will see you in a week to finish up January 1969.
Take care and stay safe out there.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.